We're going to open the floor to any questions or comments. We're going to try to limit questions and comments to 3 minutes. And maybe we can do a couple of rounds, so we'll maybe do 3 or 4 questions, and we'll do a couple of back and forth. So don't be shy, yeah, I'll add you to the list if you want to speak. Adam?
You want to go first?
Oh, I just.
Go ahead.
Okay, Gina, go ahead.
Okay. Julie, I just have a question around what was it that brought this organization together to do what you're doing? What were some of the common experiences that people share in unions that you feel you need to have this organization? Because I'm new here and I just want to know why you're here and what you're striving to do and what are some of the common problems or things that obstacles that are shared with other unions or your own specific union, but I know there are common problems in unions that they do have that are you're trying to talk about here today. So what is it that actually made this organization possible for you? That's my question.
Okay, I'm going to leave it up to somebody on the panel to answer that since I'm not one of the guest speakers. So why don't we're going to do a few questions and then come back, okay? Adam?
First of all, this was like a really, I wasn't aware coming to this this meeting that it would be so kind of a comprehensive roundup of the various sectors of bargaining and how it's been going and how it is going and how it has gone. We got a great perspective from a mobilizer standpoint, from a DivX specific standpoint, from a bargaining team standpoint, and everything in between. We've got OPS, CADS, CADA, and BPS. My question is, I'll try to keep it to 3 minutes.
You can do it.
The way that I'm seeing the structure of OPSU from a bargaining standpoint is OPS being the tip of the spear. If it'll fly with the OPS, then it'll probably fly with the BPS, with LBED, with CADA, with CADS, and certainly with BPS. And in the last round of bargaining, that was my experience also. I'm president of a composite OPS BPS local, and in a BPS bargaining unit. And 2 rounds ago, when OPS took concessions, we took concessions. And now that I'm seeing this pattern of 7 to 7.5 across all sectors, most sectors, my question is, if I'm right in saying that they use OPS as a litmus test, if they'll take it, the rest of them will take it, how do we really treat OPS as the tip of the spear that it is, focus all of our efforts on the OPS mobilizing situation so as to stop it before it starts? My real grave concern is the government, whether they're working in tandem with the administration or whether they just have a mutually agreeable arrangement, have a system that works. And I don't see why they wouldn't apply it again and again. So we need to be thinking about how it worked, why it worked, what we can put in place to maybe counteract that. Obviously, from that vantage point, a change of leadership might be cool. But we tried hitting them with facts in the Miles Wagner campaign, and Smokey responded in a similar way that he summarized the situation this morning at the Young Workers Conference, where love is solidarity, is no dissent. Dissent of any kind, regardless of the nature or accuracy of it, is hate. So he's using emotions and visceral things, and we're using facts, and that's not working. And so how can we like make this more emotional or more relevant to our members? It's a huge question. Nobody's going to be able to answer.
We're going to give it a go. We're going to give it a go.
But, thank you for your insight, everybody.
Okay, thanks, brother. Okay, Barry?
Well, good morning, good afternoon, brothers and sisters. My name is Barry Weisletter, and I'm a substitute teacher at Toronto District School Board. I was a proud member of OPSU for many years and served on its executive board 3 terms. But that was before Mike Harris kidnapped my bargaining unit without any resistance from Leah Castleman and put us in the Teachers Federation, which was a dark day indeed. But I don't want to dwell on that. I'm a socialist also, and I want to give you my perspective on the big picture. And I also want to bring greetings from the Substitute Teachers Action Caucus at the Toronto District School Board in OSSTF District 15 here in Toronto. As working people, we've got 2 enemies. We've got management and we've got the union bureaucracy. And increasingly they work hand in glove. Capital in its state have little room for maneuver, operating within the framework of capitalist austerity, an overproduction crisis, and what Marxists call a rise in organic composition of capital, which means growing reliance on technology, on equipment. You can squeeze workers, you can't squeeze equipment, and when costs rise and you're not willing to pay more as capital, you take it where you can get it, and that's out of the working class, and that means more part-time jobs, fewer benefits, slashing pensions, and all the rest of it. So that's the perspective, and only class struggle is going to decide whether we pay or those in control of the system are forced to pay.
1 minute.
And that's why this initiative is so important. In substitute teachers, the key issue is job security. We are the most precarious workforce you're likely to find. Work anywhere between 0 and 194 school days a year. Where we've been getting in recent settlements no addressing of the issue of job security. We've got about 500 jobs a day and a list of 2,000 names, and it's, you know, it's anyone's guess who's going to be working consistently. And the wage settlement, which really doesn't matter if you're not working, but if you are, it's about 1% a year. So if you're getting a little more than 2, then happy days. I just want to mention 2 other struggles that are occurring right now and conclude. And my apologies, I have to go because I have a meeting down the road in a few minutes. There's an aerospace firm in Milton, Ontario. They were in collective bargaining. It's Unifor Local. And during bargaining, the employer imposed a 30% cut in pensions. So how did the workers respond? They occupied the plant.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's a sign of change that's happening in our lives, right in front of our eyes. And we need to think about that, support them, and draw the lessons. Secondly, there's a Teamsters Local up at International Airport at Pearson, baggage handlers and aircraft maintenance people, and they're on strike over issues of respect, job intensity, and staffing, especially hours. They want to live, they want to see their families, they want to be able to function like human beings with some kind of regular schedule, and that's what they've been denied, and that's what they're fighting to reclaim. So these struggles show us that the working class is beginning to wake up, it's beginning to flex its muscles, it's beginning to show a capacity to fight back, and I anticipate even make gains. So together we will win.
Thanks, Barry. Okay, and we got one last speaker, Marcel.
Hi, I'm Marcel Shalaba from Local 509 Dobson. I got just like 2 quick things. One, I heard someone speaking about like when the tentative agreement was handed out to the membership, there wasn't any time for like people to analyze it, right? Now, my question here is like, it kind of happened with us. We just had like, we went through the whole thing, we put it out. Now, as part of the bargaining team, we can't really talk bad about it. We're supposed to push it. But what if, is it possible to have a second group that are set aside from bargaining, that their job is to take the tentative agreement, their eyes are fresh, they're not part of the process, and they can look at it and compare it to what they had, what they're being offered, and how's this going to affect anybody, and then they could in turn give their view to the membership. I think there's like a spot missing there, right? Because like when I'm presenting and I'm saying, you know what, I'm caught. I can't really say, you know, this part really sucks here, but this is good, right? And the other thing is, I find like when in the broader, like with the BPS, like all the social service agencies, we always fight in separate foxholes, right? So, and I think that really benefits the employer. And I was wondering if there's like any kind of strategy that's going to help social service agencies band together, to stand together, so that they know that a lot of the social service agencies in downtown didn't even know that we were in bargaining. And we in turn don't know that they're going into bargaining, right? There's a lot of shit that we can share with each other and learn from, right? That's it.
Thanks, Marcel. Okay, so we're going to come back to the panel. So we're going to go in reverse order and we'll get up to 5 minutes each, and I think we'll just do concluding statements since it's getting late. So Kevin, if we can start with you.
Sure. So there's a few things that I really can't address. So your question is a great question, but I'll leave that to one of the organizers of the Workers' Action Movement, if that's okay. Because I'm not one yet, maybe, I don't know.
There's a form right here.
But seriously, just because I was invited, so I'll let them address that. It's a great question though. The one thing I will say is Yeah, OPS, very important in terms of the organizing. I obviously, coming from CAD A, I'm going to say I think it's crucial that more mobilizing and organizing happens in every sector, because I think what we're seeing, I mean, you know, I'm hoping that CAD A will be in this round an exception to the rule, right? In the sense that we will not take the extension. Well, in fact, we've already had it. Yeah. So I do think that needs to happen in all sectors, but you know, can we be, through solidarity, helping each sector in their mobilizing efforts, right? So, because we're all at that sort of, I think maybe we're all points of the spear, but we're all there at different times. So can we get better at sort of joining forces? I think you're very right in terms of, there's a certain kind of politics that oftentimes folks on the left fall into, and I'm as bad as anyone, right? Where we have a very technical understanding of things, right? You know, and you talked about sort of, you know, the organic crisis there, which is great. I never heard it put exactly that way, but it's true. You can't squeeze machines the way you can human beings, right? Very true, right? Crises of overaccumulation, right? All of Harvey's great work on that. We bring that to people, and it's in many ways it's true, and I think, and it's accurate. Is it emotionally resonant? No. Does it inspire people? Not so much. So I'm with you 100%, comrade. I think we have to get better at also speaking in aspirational terms. What do people want? What world do they want to see? You know, what kind of life do they want to have for themselves and their children? You know, how do they want society to look like? You know, how do they want their relationship with nature and the biosphere to be, right? So I hear you on that. Do I have any specific suggestions right now? No, but I just think we need to keep bringing up that point and keep talking about that in our communications. I've often, an old professor of mine was really good at sort of saying, if you make an argument, there's the data, but there's also the story. And if all you have is the data, you don't really convince anyone. The story can convince a lot of people, but then some people are going to be like, well, where's the data, right? So obviously it's best to have both.
With the story, most people don't need data.
Yeah, well, no, you're right. And so the story, yeah, it's incredibly important. So I just, Marcel, like what you said about having a group apart from the bargaining team and even the DivEx that is able to mobilize in case you're forced to sell a crappy offer. I think that's an amazing idea, and I'll tell you one thing CAD A did is last round we had a crappy offer that the team had to take to the membership, and we organized a group outside of that to basically vote the offer down.
Exactly.
And just because of the lack of, we didn't have a lot of time to do it, but we were, I think the ratification was really, really low, and I think about 43% of our members voted against the offer, right? Yeah, it was pretty good. At Mohawk College, 74% of our members voted to turn the offer down. So I think, yeah, it was exciting. And we were known as an apathetic local too, right? But we never gone to the members. So were we an apathetic local, or were we just not mobilized?
Disengaged.
You're not mobilized.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no real, in my opinion, there's no real thing as apathy. Apathy is like, it looks like that on the surface, right? But really, it's underneath when you really go and dig deeper. It's other stuff, right? It's like membership engagement, education, getting the needs of what the members want. It's all this stuff, which is masked for apathy, right? You can call it that on the surface, but.
Can I just say 10 seconds?
Yes,
to finish
for
up?
sure.
Because I agree with you, and it's funny, so I'm a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And if activists and organizers thought more like teachers, if I went into a classroom and I'm like, well, you're clearly a stupid kid, you just can't learn. What kind of a teacher would I be? And I know from experience, there is no such thing as a stupid student. There's no such thing. How can I reach that person? It puts it back on me.
Yeah.
As organizers and activists, we have to do the same.
All right. Okay. Ian? Yeah, okay. Just in terms of why Workers' Action Movement, I guess, and there is a wee brochure on that here too, not to. I mean, we've described here as downward spiral of concession bargaining, problems with internal union democracy, a focus on personalities rather than policies, all of these kinds of symptoms of something that's gone off the rails to some extent. And so what we're simply saying here in the open is to let's have a debate about what the alternatives are. We know from our historical experience as a class, we are at our best when we have class unity Those are the significant points in our history where we brought around real social transformation. It's not that long ago in our own movement that there would be divisions between groups of workers based on race or their technicals, any number of ways to divide people up. The bosses always like to divide and conquer. We're talking about building class unity because that's the way we can win a fight, right? The saying in the labor movement is, the longer the line, the shorter the strike.
Right on.
We want to be part of that line, and we've joined in it today if you can join us. And I think it's important to say that we're organizing this in the open. We're clear about our principles. We're putting that out to rank and file members right across our union at any level in terms of what we're about and what we want to have a debate around. We're going to together come up with plans or actions or strategies, but we do insist on certain principles. We do need to start to have an orientation that is different than the one that the labor movement is currently wedded to and has been wedded to for some time that I described earlier, which is a reformist option. They basically believe there's nothing wrong with an economic system that allows people to be living in abject poverty in the north of this province, people that can't even get access to fresh water, that they can extract increasing profits out of lowering our wages and so forth. And this dream that if we just hold on long enough, it'll come around for us again. That's simply a fallacy. That's not the reality of the world we're living in. It's no mistake the police in this city have $1 billion budget, right? The role of the police, and this is where we do link up with other social struggles like Black Lives Matter. The role of the police ultimately in a capitalist society is social control and the protection of private property.
Yeah.
And they will oppress populations that might be difficult to them or might be rebellious. And whether it's a community within the city or whether it's a labor union that's willing to fight for something better, you can be damn sure that they'll be used against you. OPSEU knows that. OPSEU remembers that from 1996 when they brought in the OPP during the strike that we had at that time. So I think, you know, in relation to the brothers' comment around examining collective agreements and making critical analysis and sharing that, absolutely, that's something that we can do as a workers' action movement. In my previous union I was in, we were structured a bit differently in the CEIU. We were under an umbrella of the Public Service Alliance, so they were technically the bargaining agent, but we were a union with a national executive. We actually ran and funded no campaigns against our umbrella organization's recommendation. I mean, you know, we suffered some scars for that activity, but we were quite open about that. We printed and produced and held forums to give analysis of a contract we didn't agree with. We can do that to some extent through self-organization like this. That's critical to a healthy and democratic union, that there are forums for us to analyze and be critical of the direction of and recommendations on collective bargaining. Absolutely fundamentally important. At that time, we actually had the only independent press within the labor movement anywhere in North America, where we set up a newspaper that the leadership didn't control. Right? The leadership did not have editorial control over what was published, and you can be damn sure what was being published was not something that they liked. But, you know, that's what we decided needed to be done, and the membership loved that. Because it often reflected the feelings on the shop floor, the office floor, right? These are our issues. It's interesting, people talk, we can build an alternative in our workplaces in our world, but if you look at those issues, they frequently are not in collective bargaining. We need to start to talk about things like reduced work time and increasing jobs. We go out there and start to talk about creating jobs for the people in our community, targeting communities that are suffering massive unemployment. I live in Scarborough. Young people in parts of my community have unemployment rates of 25%. Right? Incarceration rates that are affecting people's ability to get the job. We can target and bring those people and give them union jobs, right? Rather than the way the employer can. These are things that can be bargained, right? We can bargain the kind of world we want, and that's why it's so critical that we have control of the bargaining process. And it also underlines the problem when you have a union that strips away our ability to do that. When they say bargaining is just essentially another bureaucratic process that we can control, with staff and some technical experts that we have sitting on joint union management committee. That's the model where they were quite happy to go. Why have all this collective bargaining? It's troublesome. People are, making all this noise. We can have some consultants, labor consultants, come here and design a contract for you. That's foreshadowed by what we're seeing happening here today, and we must resist that if we want a better world. Okay, Tracy.
Hi.
Julius,
So,
my apologies, gotta go. Ontario Federation of Labor Convention occurs in the second week of November. It would be great if WAM had an appearance there.
We'll do our best.
here.
Okay.
okay,
Tracy.
so what I'm hearing commonly from the questions are two things. One is about organizing people internally so that they feel confident to fight back, and the other is questions around pattern bargaining. So essentially, pattern bargaining is something that unions developed in order to, get something good for everybody, and everybody sticks to the something good.
Yeah. So
Right?
what do you call it? What do you call it?
It's called pattern bargaining.
Oh,
And the most obvious example is the car folks, the big three. For many years set patterns, and everybody aspired to that, and everybody, once they got a pattern that they could live with, everybody basically got that, and that was that. Because, of neoliberalism, because things have changed in the last 40 years, pattern bargaining in some ways have now begun to go in the opposite direction where, they set the bar really low and then everybody has 7.75% over 4 years, right? That doesn't mean that pattern bargaining is a failure. So what you guys are talking about is not the technical thing of, a couple of negotiators go in and get a deal. It's about raising everybody's expectations, right? And talking to each other so that everybody is fighting the same fight. So that is the challenge that you guys want an answer to. So when you talk about social services, the most effective way is to be able to reach each other. And I know that there are forums, once every 2 years in the BPS. You guys get together for a conference and you get a chance to talk to each other about what's going on in your sector. And there are divisional, sectoral organizations within OPSU where you guys get together. I urge you to use some of those contacts and get together in between, because the only way to keep each other in the loop is through conversations. I spent an hour, I wish it was just an hour. I spent a year and a half, the last 12 years that I've spent trying to fight to get part-time employees at the colleges into a union. I spent a year and a half actually out, organizing in the colleges, talking mostly to young people, because a lot of the support staff are young people, about what the benefit is of a union and what they can do to control their working conditions and make their world a better place. And you would not believe what an easy conversation that was with young people. It was freaking awesome, right? So people are ready to hear this. They're ready to work together. You just have to give them the space to do it. And a very loose structure. We have social media, we have telephones, we have bars and cafes. We can get together and see each other, and it doesn't have to be a meeting like this. So I urge you to use the contacts that you have, because there are lots of like-minded people out there, and talk to them. To Barry's point about the occupation of the plant out in Milton and the airport folks, that did not come about in a vacuum. Those places had met in cafes and bars and meeting halls and talked to each other, and their strategy has been to work together in solidarity and fight back. And it works. That's why people do it. Right? So again, the common struggle, the thing that brings people together in rooms like this, to answer your question, I'm not a member of WAM. I was invited by Julius because we're old colleagues in the union. Is exactly that. It's to find a space to be able to build something together. And there's no more powerful force in the union than people getting together in a room and talking. I hate to say it, but that's our biggest tool. There are more of us than there are of the boss. And we have the ability to withdraw our labor, but we also have an ability to set an agenda that makes things better for us. So given that opportunity, take it every time. that's all, that's it.
Great, thank you, great. Okay, and lastly, Sam.
So I'll keep it short. I know we're getting beyond here. Thanks, guys, again for coming. It's a crucial discussion we're having. The sister, what brought us together? I think WHAM was kind of a loose grouping that we picked up, and different people have kind of picked it up in different shops across Ontario and the province. It's a loose grouping, so you can start your own WHAM chapter with loose coordination, right? And developing those principles in your local, right? I think labor unions, the bureaucracy, they've really stifled a lot of engagement, right? If you look in the States, you have a 10% maybe unionization rate with the CIO and the AFL. They've been given very, very low, right? This has become a North American trend. So, you know, that low engagement with youth, but they're looking for a fight back and a change, right? You have a lot of young people getting out of university with degrees, and they've learned about the world and how things work, and they're willing to, you know, change things, but they're stuck in situations where they're, you know, not necessarily being engaged, right? I first was interested in low election turnouts when I first got to university, and said, why is none of the youth voting, right? And through time in political parties, you quickly learn that that's not the arena necessarily gauge youth. So how do we fight back? It's necessarily in our workplace for the most part. So, you know, stuff like unionizing Walmart, they'll say, oh, you'll never get in there, you'll never do that. Yeah, but if we can create legislation that where we can make it easier to unionize these places, card check certification, other things that Mike Harris took away from us. You know, the sky's the limit. There's a lot of opportunity out there to get unionized workers that aren't within the labor movement. And this is, you know, a huge plank going forward, you know, getting these people involved, right? Adam, it's funny, the OPS is the spear. It's the 75, I mean, at one point it was the 75,000, the big number, right? I think now maybe 35,000 workers. So it's splintering, right? And you have this privatization, even even number of P3s and sell-offs. I heard from the sister last night about LHINs and the community healthcare agencies, and it just sounds like a terrible mess about the agencies and the funding and how it transpires into the community, creating terribly precarious work for healthcare professionals of various sorts, right? So, you know, silence is killer, right? You know, I think a lot of youth get into political parties and unions very wide-eyed, but quickly get disillusioned. You know, my first convention, it was very interesting, right? And if I didn't meet the comrades that I did in Region 5 and have the people that were able to draw me in, I might have got disillusioned and went somewhere else, right? After seeing some of the stuff that went on first convention, right? But these are necessary discussions and fights to have, right? And sometimes these things blow out in the open. It's unfortunate, but it's a symptom of bottlenecking and having leadership at the top that isn't necessarily pushing the union in a social democratic position, right? So, you know, if you look at the worldwide spectrum, right, you have Corbyn in the UK. How did he come about? Through left-wing victories in the unions, right, that pushed him forward unapologetically. And he was relentlessly attacked by the media and the structure and, you know, the right-wingers. You know, and he won, right? And people ultimately, you know, multiple times, right? He got mandates from the British, from his own party members, and then from the British electorate multiple times, right? If you look at the Bernie phenom, right? So with Trumpism, I mean, the mask has come off, and the old order is unspokenly no longer legitimate, right? And a lot of youth know this. They've known it for years, but with the developments as of late, it's become more acute, right? So, fighting back in your workplace and making those connections. And Marcel, I mean, it's organizing outside of official channels, right? If need be. It's very interesting. You have different agencies in the same downtown network that, you know, aren't talking to each other during bargaining, right? But I think that's more through organizations like WHAM, or even, you know, organizing outside of these channels and making those connections, just saying, look, like, we need to support each other in these networks, right? The more people are talking about it, the more we can come together. But you need a base, right? It doesn't happen in a vacuum. And for me, that is a strong left-wing social democratic impetus, you know, socialist tendency. To organize youth, to give them something to fight back for, and just people to something to believe in, right? Because none of this happens in a vacuum, and you know, I think we've seen liberalism run its course in a certain sense. So it's definitely a journey and a battle, and I'm hoping more people get involved with WHAM, and we can build this organization leading up into 2018 and 2019, and really giving a really left-wing democratic option to delegates of OPSU in the years forward. So thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks. And thanks everyone for coming out on a beautiful Saturday afternoon with a conference taking place. They had to hike all the way up here. We're going to have Our presence on Labor Day this year. We're going to bring this banner, we're going to march with OPSU. And so join us and stay tuned. If we haven't already signed in, please do so. We can add you to our email list. We have a Facebook group as well. And going forward, yeah, stay tuned. And thanks, folks, for coming out and being part of this panel.
Yeah.
All right.